Welcome to the Leaders Room. My name is Michael Kostler. It's my pleasure to be your host today. The Leaders Room is an initiative of the eCliff Leadership and Governance Center. In this space, we bring together leaders from around the world to talk about their philosophy of leadership, to talk about the values, sense of purpose, and mindset that drives them to be successful. Today, we're really fortunate to talk with Chris Gardner, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and man of success. His story has been characterized like a Horatio Alger novel, of riches to rags and rags to riches type of story. Today we'll be talking with Chris about his incredible experience and his life today. Chris, welcome to the Leaders Room.
Michael.
How you doing?
Thank you, man. Now look, you know what, that introduction was so cool, but that part about going from riches to rags, I don't know anything about that part. No, I don't want to see that part. All right.
I have seen this one video clip of you, Chris, where you're in the back of a taxi and the guy asks, how much money you have in your pocket. Mm-hmm. And you start counting out the bills and you say, and the guy says something like, you don't have any small bills? And you say, I like cash. so that tells me something about you.
Well, you know what? You're talking to a guy, and I know you're aware of this, who at one point having $10 extra was a big deal.
Right.
$10 extra meant I could breathe for a minute, right? And hey.
So Chris, for our listeners and viewers, can you give us a 2 or 3 minute kind of synopsis of your story?
I don't know if I can do that succinctly, but I can say this. What I do know is that it's not about me. Mm-hmm. It is a universal story of everyone who ever was given permission to dream.
Right.
Everyone who ever was given permission that, well, you can do this. You can be this. Given that permission and took it and believed it. Mm-hmm. And have been blessed to, at this point, not just giving it to my children, but being in a position to give it to another generation. Mm-hmm. And to share that permission to dream all around the world. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm honored to be here in Kuala Lumpur today with you. And I say that in all sincerity. People ask me a lot of times, well, where are you going next or where have you been? Doesn't matter. All I know is right here, right now, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I'm absolutely honored to be here. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you. So Chris, what drives you? What are the values that underpin everything that you do?
Let me answer that question this way.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about the 2 biggest decisions I ever made in my life. Mm-hmm. Number 1, I made a decision as a 5-year-old boy that when I grow up, become a man and have children, my children are going to know who their father is.
Right.
That became the most important decision that I've ever made in my life. And that's the reason we're sitting here right now having this conversation. Mm-hmm. Number 2, because I was given permission to dream from my mom, I made another decision, and that decision was I was going to become world class at whatever I did in my life. Not good at it, not pretty good at it, but world class at it. Yeah. And when you say what drives me, that's what drives me to this day. Mm-hmm. One of, if not the most important thing in the world for me right now, personally, I want to see myself in my 2.0 version. I want to see the 2.0 version of me, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. I want to see me hitting on all 12 cylinders. I've hit on 8 out of 12, 9 out of 12. I've hit on 10 out of 12. But I don't know if I've ever hit on all 12 cylinders simultaneously on command. So that's what drives me.
Okay, all right. So at eCliff, we talk a lot about leadership energy and that there are 3 sources of leadership energy. One's values, which was the question I started to ask you about. One, sense of purpose, why am I here? Mm-hmm. And the other is the mindset. In your book, The Pursuit of Happiness, you talk about a defining moment in 1970. you're sitting there watching a March Madness game, okay? And you make some comment. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. You know, those guys are going to end up making $1 million someday. And from a room next door where your mother's working, she makes a comment about.
She changes the world for me.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to watch. It's a college basketball game. And the announcer is hyping the game. He's talking about all the money some of these players are going to make simply because they could run and jump and catch a ball. And I said out loud, talking to the television, I said, wow, man, one day that guy's going to make $1 million. Thank God, Michael, my mom heard me say it, because she said, son, if you want to, one day you can make $1 million. Whoa. Until she said those words, the thought never entered my mind. After she said them, the thought never left my mind. That had become part of what I call my spiritual genetics.
Okay.
She went on to say the most remarkable thing, which was, son, if you want to make the team, go to the gym. If you want to own the team, go to the library. Whoa. You know what makes it so remarkable right this moment today is earlier this year, I failed in an attempt to buy an NBA franchise. I'll put together a group to buy the Atlanta Hawks of the National Basketball Association. We bid $700 million. $700 million, second highest price ever offered for an NBA franchise, and lost. I'm like, Mom, you didn't tell me about this part. But you know what? That was okay because that was practice. That was practice. Quincy Jones once said to me, the best singing that he ever heard was Michael Jackson at practice. Phil Jackson once said the best basketball he ever saw was Michael Jordan at practice. I like practice. I'll be back.
So what are you practicing for?
I'll be back. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
I'll be back. Trust me. Remember we had this conversation, okay?
Okay. All right. Okay. So your values, your mother said, you know, dream big. Dream whatever you want to dream and believe that you can achieve that. Actualizing that is something else. And along the way, you know, you're noted for having run into a lot of barriers and hurdles that you had to overcome, where people literally said, why do you have the audacity to dream those types of things? Yeah. How did you overcome that?
I didn't listen to him.
You didn't listen to them.
I could hear the voice. I could hear my mom's voice. I could hear those words, you can do or be anything. I will also never forget hearing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once say, he was speaking to a group of sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. As a matter of fact, it was the night before he was assassinated. And he was saying to these garbage men, whatever you're going to do with your life, you should seek to become the best at it. His exact words were, if you're going to be a garbage man, you should seek to become the best garbage man. Those lessons from my mom, those words from Dr. King, I knew all I got to do is find my button. What is that one thing that just turns me on? And I talk to people about this all around the world, and the truth is, I cannot tell anyone how to find their button, but I do know this. A lot of us already know, we're just afraid to push it.
Why do you think that is?
We're afraid to push it because some people might not dig it. Some people might not say it's okay. Some people are going to say, you're going to do what? Why are you going to do that? Forget that. We've got people in this room right now, journalists. At some point, somebody in this room made a decision, I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to be a writer.
Right.
And at some point, somebody in their lives probably said to them, a what? Writer? How you going to pay the rent? Who's a writer? Right? But we got journalists sitting here right now because they believed. You got to be able to see it with the eyes in your soul. You might not physically be able to see it, but if you can see it with the eyes in your soul, nobody's got to dig it but you. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Right? Nobody's got to dig it but you, man. And I have to tell you, I've just been so blessed, Michael, and I'm so thankful and humble. And I will never, ever, ever be able to repay some of the blessings that I've been given, because I was able to convince some others that, yeah, I can do this if you give me the opportunity. All right? I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, but I'm thinking of two guys that 30 years ago gave me an opportunity to work on Wall Street when nobody else would.
Right.
Those two guys today are two of my best friends.
Okay. So Chris, I'm imagining though that there's some people either watching or listening to this recording that are saying, this guy is way too positive. It couldn't have been as easy as it almost sounds like.
Who said it was easy?
Well, okay, so there had to have been at least one dark night of the soul in your journey. Maybe multiple dark nights of the soul.
Absolutely.
How did you pull? What was the mindset, Chris, that pulled you out of that?
I will say this. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to a point in my life where I was at my absolute lowest emotionally, financially, spiritually, in the darkest moment. Spending nights in that train station washroom with my little boy.
Right.
What a lot of people don't know is, in the film, Jaden Smith plays my son as a 5-year-old. In reality, my son was 14 months old. He was still in diapers.
Yeah.
Right? And there was a highly polished piece of sheet metal over the sink. It wasn't a mirror, but it served as a mirror. And I had to wash my little boy every day, and I had to ask myself, why did this happen? Why did that happen? What's going to happen next? The hardest question, Michael, I had to ask and answer every day was, how did I get here? And the answer was more brutal. The answer was, I drove here. I had something to do with the situations and circumstances that had become my life. I drove here, and there was something very empowering about that.
Right.
Something very liberating, because I knew the second I said it, whoa, well, if I drove here, then I can drive out of here. You can't change something until you own it. I drove here. And to the people who say, well, he's just too positive, look, I've had my dark days.
Right.
I've had challenging times. I'm coming off of probably emotionally the most challenging experience of my life. I lost the love of my life to brain cancer 3 years ago. And there's a darkness that comes with that.
Yes, sir.
But the light is, I had the honor of being there and being her primary caregiver. I had the honor of her knowing, no, baby, I'm right here.
Is that Holly?
Holly.
So one of the things that I noticed earlier today when you were prepping for the conference that starts tomorrow, every time her picture came up, you just stood and you looked there silently.
Oh, man.
And I was at the back of the auditorium thinking, what's the story behind that?
That was Holly.
That was Holly.
And you know what, man, let me tell you something. 20 years. And some of the last conversations that she and I were having was her saying to me, now that we can see how truly short life can be, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? That's not just a rhetorical question at that point.
Right.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? What am I going to do? I'm going to start living my own advice. I've written books about it. I've talked about it. I said it here tonight. If you're doing something you're not truly passionate about, you're compromising yourself every single day. That's why I'm trying to get to the 2.0 version of me.